Right here.
Great, but anyway.
Okay, here we go. Because this is the Mishnah, literally, right here, 95b2. So we know there's an halacha that says, Tumo chutra b'tzibur. If everybody's tamei, nobody's tamei. Right? We've had this all the way through. If everybody's tamei, nobody is tamei, and you're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach where the majority of people are tamei. So the Mishnah says, HaPesach sheba b'tumah. A Pesach that was brought in a state of tumah, meaning that the Pesach was brought because tumah chutra b'tzibur. The majority of people would think. Nonetheless, lo yochlu, they should not eat mimenu. Who shall not eat from it? Even though it was brought b'tumah, they're not allowed to eat from it. Zavin v'zavais, those men and women who see bodily admissions. Nidois, exactly what you just said. Women who are nidois, v'yolodos, and women who gave birth shall not eat from it. V'im ochru, but if they do eat from it, because the Korban Pesach, as it was brought in a state of tamei because of tumah when everybody is tamei, nobody is tamei. So if these tamei v'im ochru paturin mikoris, they're potter from chorus, which is exactly what Isaac just said. Rabbi Eliezer opoiter ach al bias midosh, and Rabbi Eliezer says, not only are they potter from chorus, from eating it if they eat it when they shouldn't have, but the truth of the matter is a tamei person is not allowed to walk into the Beis Hamikdash. If these people walk into the Beis Hamikdash, even though they are tamei, because Tumah was Hutra b'tzibur, the rest of the tzibur was allowed to be inside the Azara, because we brought the Pesach in a state of Tamei, they too, says Rabbi Eliezer, do not get chorus for having walked into the temple into the Beis Hamikdash in a state of Tamei. So for this, the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, Zavin v'zavois, nidois v'yolodois, Zabin and Zabais, Nidois, and those who gave birth, Sha'achlu b'Pesach, that eat the Pesach Shabbat b'Tumah, that itself was brought b'Tumah again because of Tumah Putra b'Tzibor, Yachol Yehei Chayovin, I might have thought they were Chayiv Koris, Talmud Loima, therefore the Pasuk says, the first Pasuk says, Kol Tor Yochel Basa, anybody that's pure shall eat the meat. The next pasuk says, "Va'nefesh asher toichel basar mizebach hashlamim," but a person who shall eat, a soul that shall eat the meat of a shlamim offering, asher la Hashem, that belongs to Hashem, v'tumasai olav, and his tumah shall be upon him, v'nichrasa, he'll be cut off. Teaching us the juxtaposition of the two psukim, that a Torah person is allowed to eat. A tamei person is not allowed to eat from a sacrificial offering. From here we learn from the juxtaposition of the two psukim, necha l'tahirim chayavim alav mishum tamei. When the offering is only good for those who are tahar to eat from it, that means anybody who's tamei cannot eat from it. But v'she'einoi necha l'tahirim, but if it's an offering where not only Tahirim can eat from it, but even Tamein could theoretically eat from it. In the case of Tumah Hutra b'Tzibur, where everybody is Tamei, nobody is Tamei, in that case, Tamein Chayim Alav Mishum Tamei, therefore a Tamer person is not Chayim for eating it for Tamei. So the Isser of eating sacrificial offerings when you're tamei is only when only tahor people can be involved in the carbon. But when it's a case where tahor people and tamei people can be involved, i.e. when it's tumah hutra b'tzibur, when the majority of people are tamei, in that case falls away the aveira of a tamei eating from, well, falls away the punishment. I shouldn't say the aveira. Falls away the punishment of chorus for a tamei eating from the holy sacrifices. Comes Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer oimer, Yochel dochu zovin b'nichsun la'azara b'Pesach. Now I might have thought if a zov pushes his way in and enters into the azara of the Beis Hamikdash, the temple's courtyard, b'Pesach haba b'tumah, on a Pesach that in fact was brought in a state of Tomei, because Tumah hutra b'tzibur, that most of the majority of people were Tomei. Yochel chayovim, I might have thought that they would be chayiv koros for the usual penalty of a Tomei person walking into the temple, into the Beis Hamikdash, Talmud loymad, therefore it says, V'yishalchu min hamachna kol tzurua v'chol zav v'chol Tomei lenefesh. And the Torah says, you should send away from the camp any mitzayir zav and anybody who was coming with a tumas meis, which, by putting this halacha right next to the halachas of those, in other words, putting the case of a tumas meis together with the zav and a mitzayir, because the pasuk goes, you shall send away from the machna anybody that has saras, anybody that has zav, and anybody who's tamei from a corpse. Teaching us, Bizman Shatima Mesim Mishtalchin, Zav and Mitzayim Mishtalchin, at a time when those who are Tama Mace, those who are Tama from a corpse, are sent out of the Beis Hamikdash, so to other Zavim and the Mitzayim is sent out. And Tama Mace Mishtalchin, but in a case when Tama Mace, people who are Tama Mace, who are Tama from a corpse, are not sent out from the Beis Hamikdash, i.e., the Tumah Chutra B'tzibur, when everybody is Tamei, nobody is Tamei. In those cases, the Tumas Mace is not sent out from the Beis Hamikdash. In that case, Ein Zavin and Mitzayim Mishtalchin. In that case as well, Zavin and Mitzayim, those who have the biblical leprosy or have a bodily emission, are also not sent out from the Beis Hamikdash.
Where are we holding?
We are holding 95b3. The bottom, the right hand column, right on the bottom. Boyi Rav Yosef.
Got it.
Good morning. You got it. Great. So, what are we saying over here? Just to give it a little akdama here again. A korban Pesach that is offered b'tomei, meaning Tumah Chutra b'tzibur. The majority of people are tomei, so nobody's tomei, right? That's what we say. Majority is tomei, nobody is tomei, and you can bring the korban Pesach. In a case where the Pesach itself is brought in a state of Tamei, people who are contaminated, who are Tamei with Tumas Meis, with the corpse, with the dead person's Tamei, are allowed to enter into the Azara of the Beis Hamikdash, into the temple courtyard, to offer their Pesach, because the Pesach is offered where? Is brought in the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, in the Azara of the Beis Hamikdash. Right, so again, if the Pesach is Tumah Chutra B'tzibur, if I'm allowed to bring the Pesach even though in a state of Tumah, where the majority of people are Tamei, which means therefore the people who themselves are Tamei, Tumas Meis, are allowed to walk into the Beis Hamikdash's courtyard to offer up their korban Pesach, which then leads to the following question. Boyi Rav Yosef, Doch you Tumas Meis, if a Tumas Meis pushed his way in, the Nichnu Leheichol, and went into the sanctuary, Pesach Habo B'Tumah Mahu. In other words, where is the Pesach brought? The Pesach is brought in the courtyard, in the Hazara of the Beis Hamikdash. If you remember the picture, there's the Hazara, and then there are the 15 steps that lead down from the Hazara into the Heichal, where the menorah is, where the Shulchan is, where the Mizbeach Hazav is. That has much holier status to it. So we said, okay, the Pesach, which is brought in the Hazara in the courtyard, Tumah Chutra B'tzibur, when everybody's coming, nobody's coming. So the Pesach is brought in the Hazara, so people themselves who are Tamei Meis are allowed to walk into the Hazara. What happens if they go further and they walk into the Heichal? They walk into the Heichal. Do they get punished? Do they get chorus for the sin of a Tameh person walking into the Beis Hamikdash? Do we say no? Since they were already allowed to walk into the Azara. Once you gave them a heter, you allowed them, you took them off the hook, and they're allowed to walk into the Azara, into the courtyard. They can continue right on walking into the Heichal. Or no, what you allowed, you allowed. What you didn't allow, you didn't allow. And that's the question over here. If a Tameh Mace pushes his way into the Heichal at a time when the Pesach and a time when the Pesach brought in the Azara was brought in a state of Tameh because of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Now, what's the din? 95b4. 95b4. Mid Ishrei Tumas Azara, since we allowed Tumah into the courtyard because of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur, I was allowed to bring the Korban Pesach in the courtyard. And the people who were Tameh Mace were allowed into the temple, into the Beis Hamikdash's courtyard, right? So therefore I say, since I've already opened the door to allowing Tumah people in, and Nami, the medical Ishtiri, Nami Tumah Seichel, I allowed also the Tumah of the Heichal, because once I allowed it. So once you allow them to walk into the courtyard, it's okay. They can continue on walking right into the Heichal. In other words, we look at the Beis Hamikdash as one whole. As one whole. It's called the Beis Hamikdash, which happens to have two rooms. One room is the Azara, one room is the Heichal. If I allow you into one room, I'm allowing you into another room. Dilma, no. Dilma, my the Ishri. What I allowed. The Azara, the courtyard, I allowed. My the Lo Yishri. And what I did not allow, i.e. the Heichal, I didn't allow. Rava says Rava Amakra. The pasuk says that a Tameh person is sent away from the camp. Okay, afilu mixas machne, which seems to me even a portion of the camp, i.e., it doesn't matter. In other words, that even if only a portion of the camp he's in, he's got to go out, which means that just because I allow him into the Azara, doesn't mean I allow him into the Heichal. Where he's allowed, he's allowed. Where he's not allowed, he's not allowed. There's limits to what you can do. Says the Gemara, you can learn this just the opposite, and that's what other people do. Ikadiyamri, Amar Rava, Amar Kra, the same pasuk. Vayishalchu min hamachna el michutz lamachna tashlichum. The Rava says in the commandment of kicking them out, it says those Tameh people, they have to be sent away from the camp to the outside of the camp. You shall expel them. What does that mean? Only to those people that you say to the outside of the camp you shall expel them, which means that the Tameh people have to be expelled completely from the camp, whichever camp it is. There are three camps in the Midbar. In the wilderness, there were three camps. Machne Shechina, that's the highest level, the camp of the Most High. Machne Ravia, the camp of the Levites, and Machne Yisrael, the camp of the Yisrael. The corresponding to this in the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash is Machne Shechina, the camp of the holy. The Har Habayis, the mountain, is Machne Ravia. And Yerushalayim is Machne Yisrael. Just keep that in the back of your head. Here's the bottom line, says the Gemara Kolek, that you have to send out completely from the camp, that any Tameh person has to completely go out. That's when we say you send away from the camp. But that would mean that if in part of the camp you are allowed to be there, even though you're Tameh, which is the case of what? Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur, when everybody is Tameh, nobody is Tameh. So if that heter and nobody is Tameh when everybody is Tameh allows a Tameh person to be in part of the camp, if you're part of the camp, then all the camp is okay to you. So there's one or two ways you can learn this. Either you can learn it out even from part of the camp you're out, or no, if it's only part of the camp, but the rest of the camp you're allowed in, then in that case you're allowed in completely to the whole camp. Okay, another question. The bottom of 95b4, the bottom of the Yomi. Bayi Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, Doch Yutami Mason, if those contaminated with corpse, in other words, with the corpse, push their way in, and what did they do? V'ochlu imurei Pesach haba b'tumah, and they ate their imurei Pesach. The last Rashi on the page, kegoin, for example, kiloyis v'yoseres hakobe, the liver and the other stuff. In other words, these sacrificial parts, the amurim, are the sacrificial parts that are removed from every sacrifice and are offered and are brought up onto the Mizbeach for burning. In other words, whose table do they end up on? They end up on the table of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shulchan Givoya. It's on the table of the Most High. So in other words, you're never supposed to eat emurim. It's a terrible avera if you eat the emurim. I believe it's chorus. But here's the question. I have a Pesach, okay, that was brought in a state of Tomei because of Tumah Hutra B'tzibor. So now the emurim that are taken out, maybe or maybe not, are allowed to be brought up on the Mizbeach. You're allowed to bring the carbon Pesach. You're allowed to slaughter the carbon Pesach because of Tumah Hutra B'tzibor. But let's say we hold Tumah is Duchya B'tzibor. Tumah is only pushed off in the Tzibor. So that would mean you're allowed to bring the carbon Pesach, but the emurim, the sacrificial parts, are still Tomei, which means theoretically they're not allowed up onto the Mizbeach. So now we're on Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph. We're on today's daf, 96a1. Mahu, what's the halacha? Okay, what's the halacha? Zok Rashi. Look at the top Rashi on the page of 96a1. Rashi, Mi mechayve mishum oichel kodshim b'tumah iloi. Are you mechayev from eating kodshim, of eating holy offering meat, b'tumah oloi? In other words, in a state of tumah, there's an halacha that a tumah person is not allowed to eat sacrificial meat. If he's tameh, he's not allowed to eat sacrificial meat. But in this case, the Pesach that was brought from where this emurim, from where these sacrificial meat came from, was brought in a state of tameh. And since you were allowed to bring it in a state of tameh because of tumah b'tzibor, and now he eats the emurim, forget about the avera of eating the emurim themselves. Does he get the avera of eating kachim while in a state of tameh or not? Do I say mizdi ishrei tumas basa, ishrei nami tumas emurim? Do I say, since I permitted the eating of tameh basa, that means the meat of the Pesach, because I said tumah hutra b'tzibur, when everybody is tameh, nobody is tameh, so I'm allowed to bring the carbon, and everybody's allowed to eat from the carbon. Because remember, you can't bring the carbon Pesach unless it's roi, it's available to be eaten, right? So therefore, everybody's allowed to eat it, even though everybody's in a state of tameh, right? So since I already opened up the door to allow a tameh to eat from the carbon Pesach, therefore it turns out too that you're allowed to eat from the emurim. Yes, you'll get an avera of eating the emurim, but you won't get the much worse avera of eating kachim b'tumah. Dilma, no. My the Ishri. We allowed you to eat the carbon Pesach because of Tumah Hutra B'tzibor. We didn't let you mind the law Ishri. You're not supposed to be eating the emurim, the sacrificial offerings that go on the Mizbeach. You're not supposed to be eating, so they were not part of the heter of Tumah Hutra B'tzibor. What's the din? So what's the din? Says the Gemara, Amarava Mechti. Let's see. Turimas emurim mehecha israbi. We don't even know that there is such a thing as a tumah prohibition regarding the sacrificial parts. Why would I think there isn't? Very simple. Because I'm not allowed to eat the sacrificial parts. They go up, they're offered on the Mizbeach. So maybe I would think that since you're not allowed to eat them, no law was ever said regarding eating them in a state of tumah. Says the Gemara, yes, we do. From mitumas basuk, because we learn it out from the very fact of not eating the regular meat of a sacrifice, which normally you're allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat it in a state of contamination. Diksiv, because it says in the pasuk, Asher Hashem, what belongs to Hashem, i.e. the emurim, the sacrificial parts that go up on the mizbeach. L'Rabbi says emurim to include the sacrificial parts in the prohibition of a tomei person not being able to eat kudshim, not even to eat holy offerings. Not only the parts, says the Gemara, not only the parts that normally you are allowed to eat in a state of purity, in a state of tahar, but in fact, even the stuff you're not allowed to eat, i.e. the emurim, the sacrificial offerings on the mizbeach, you're not allowed to eat them in a state, even when you're in a state of tahar. And if you do eat, not only do you get an avera of eating the emurim that don't belong to you, belong to Hashem, but in fact, you also get an avera for eating it b'tomei. The rabbi says emurim. This being the case, since you learn one from the other, you learn emurim from basa, the sacrificial parts from the regular meat, just like the regular meat. In a case of tumah hutra b'tzibur, when everybody's tummy, nobody is tummy, when we allow you to eat the basar in a state of tummy, you're allowed to eat the regular meat in a state of tummy, you're allowed to eat the korban pesach in a state of tummy. Asir l'tumah murin, the tumah part, the tumah prohibition of eating the sacrificial parts, right? We say like this, when it's in force, that you're not allowed to eat the meat when you are tamei, tamei is emurim. That law is in force regarding the sacrificial parts. That when you're tamei, you're not allowed to eat the sacrificial parts. You're not allowed to eat the sacrificial parts anyways, and you get a second avera of eating it b'tamei. Kol heichel delese l'tumah basa. But where the prohibition of eating sacrificial meats in a state of tamei is taken off, i.e. tumah hutra b'tzibur, when everybody's tummy, nobody's tummy, or duchya b'tzibur, it's at least pushed off, and I'm allowed to eat the korban pesach in a state of tumah, laisi the tumah emurim, so too does the tumah prohibition of eating the sacrificial parts is also not enforced. So in other words, you do get the avera of having eaten them and not brought them up onto the altar, but you don't get the second avera of having eaten them in a state of contamination. Bayer Rab Zera, says Rab Zera, and this is really a prologue to the Mishnah that's coming. In Mitzrayim, the year that they brought the first korban Pesach, where did they burn the sacrificial parts of the Pesach Mitzrayim, the Pesach that was burned in Mitzrayim? Who said they didn't make a roast of them? Meaning, who said they had to bring it? Maybe there was no command to bring sacrificial parts. Maybe they just go ahead, they roasted and they ate it together as part of the korban Pesach. Because as we're going to see, the rules of the Pesach, the first Pesach in Pesach Mitzrayim were different than the rest of the Pesach L'Doirus, the Pesach that's been brought throughout the generations. Ba'oid Hartana Rabbi Yosef, and says Rabbi Yosef said, Shloisha Mizbechai Sayusham. There were 3 altars in Mitzrayim on which the blood of the Pesach was placed. Ala mashkei, ala shnei mezuzos, on the lintel and the 2 doorposts of the door. If you remember, they had to put the blood over there so that the angel, that the Makas Bechoris, their doors got passed over. Otherwise known, the English name for the Yontif, passed over. Asher Posach as Bote B'nai Yisrael, because he passed over the houses of B'nai Yisrael. And there was nothing else. There was no other altar in which to bring the sacrificial parts. So since there was no other part where to do it, that's it. It wasn't part of the din. So now says the next Mishnah right off the bat. Ma bein Pesach Mitzrayim the Pesach Doris. What was the difference between the Pesach that was brought in Mitzrayim to the Pesach that was brought for the rest of the generations? Pesach Mitzrayim Mikhaim maybe Asar. The Pesach Mitzrayim, the animal had to be taken on the 10th of Nisan. If you remember, on Shabbos HaGodol, they all took a sheep and they tied it to their beds. One reason being to stick it in the nose of the Mitzrayim who worshipped the sheep. In a similar way, the cows roam in India because there are Indians that worship the cows, right? And a required sprinkling its blood with a bundle of hyssop, right? If you remember, the pasuk says, "The goodness azov, you should put it on upon the lintel and the two doorposts of your house." The nechal b'chipazon, it was eaten extraordinarily quickly. B'layla echad, in one night. Now this already needs explanation, because even Pesach l'doiris, Pesach for the generations, the Pesach is only eaten for one night, right? It's only eaten for one night. So the Gemara is obviously going to have to tackle this one line over here. B'layla echad. Who Pesach doiris, and the Pesach of the generations, noig kol shiva, is noig all 7 days. Stop right there, everybody. Even now, how many days do we eat the Korban Pesach? One night, the night of the 15th. So what's exactly the end of this Mishnah? B'layla echad for the Pesach Mitzrayim, and Pesach doiris all 7. That's not the case. So obviously the Gemara has to explain what's going on. Okay, we're up to 96A2. 96A2. So first of all, the Gemara says, how do you know that in Pesach Mitzrayim, they had to go ahead and take the sheep on the 10th of the month? They had to tie up the sheep on the 10th of the month. Minallah Dixid, because the pasuk says, Dabu el kol adas Yisrael, and you should say to the congregation of Israel, Lema, to say, Be'esel l'chodesh hazeh b'yikru. On the 10th of this month, you shall take each man a celebite, a kid. Zeh mitcha me'asara. On this occasion, you take on the 10th. Then Pesach doiris mitcha me'asara. But Pesach, further on, for the generations, you don't take on the 10th. By the way, as an aside, this is the first time in the Torah that it says Adas Yisrael. Dabra kol Adas Yisrael, to the assemblage, the congregation of Israel. Why this mitzvah gets an Adas for the first time? So it seems to me because this is the first mitzvah that applied to everyone. The first mitzvah in the Torah is Pirurivya, have children. That mitzvah is only on men and not on women because the men do the action. The second mitzvah is circumcision, milah, which is obviously only again on men. The third mitzvah is gid anosha, that we're not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve. Now that's on everybody, but that's not a mitzvah chiyuva that you're obligated to. That's a mitzvah kiyumis that you have to keep. If you eat meat, don't eat the sciatic nerve. But if you don't eat meat, you don't have the mitzvah. So you can go all your life and be a vegetarian and never be the kind of mitzvah gid anosha. The fourth mitzvah is kiddush hachodesh, which is again only on men that can testify, and furthermore, only on men who are Gedolei Adar. So the first mitzvah that applied to men, women, children, slaves, and everybody else, the first mitzvah was the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. So I think that's the reason why the Torah says, Adas Yisrael, congregation of Israel. Anyways, keep going weiter, says the Gemara weiter, Elamiyato. If that's a fact, that where it says Hazeh, this means only in Pesach Mitzrayim, but not the Pesach for the generations. But let's take a look. It says over there, it should be yours. Take the animal on the 10th, and it should be yours to watch until the 14th day of the month, which means you have to be careful to make sure it doesn't get a blemish. It means there only in the Pesach Mitzrayim was there a requirement to take the animal 4 days earlier to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't get blemished. the ain achatun and bikur, and no other sacrifice therefore requires this examination, then nothing else besides the Pesach Mitzrayim, the Pesach that was born in Mitzrayim, required this 4-day examination to make sure it wasn't blemished. But that can't be. But Tanya, that's not true, because the Brisa says, Ben Bagbag says, Minayin l'tomid. How do we know that the tomid that's brought twice a day, to start the day, the tomid ben babayker, or the tomid ben abayim. The tomid in the morning, which starts the service, and the tomid ben abayim, the tomid of the afternoon, which ends the avodah. Minayin l'tomid shetoyim bikur abo yom kodim shchita. How do I know that the animals set aside for the tomid require examining for 4 days, 4 days before, from 4 days before, to make sure it doesn't get a blemish? Shenem tishmu lahakriv li. Oh, did I just lose everybody? Tishmu lahak. No, I got you. Tishmu, hi Charlie, I got you. Tishmu lahakriv li b'moy adoy. You should take this. So Charlie, we're b'chavrusa now. Tishmu lahakriv li b'moy adoy. So it says in the Talmud, you shall watch it to offer it in b'moy its time. V'halon hu'omer, but in regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim, the Pesach that was born in Mitzrayim, it says v'hoyo lachem mishmeres araba osa. You shall watch it until the 14th of the month. So you see that rule that it says hazeh, it's only by Carbon Pesach of Mitzrayim. That's not so. You see over here that the Carbon Tamid also has the rule of having to watch 4 days before. And for the Gemara Shani Hasam, there's a difference. The Ksiv, because it says Tishmeru, you shall take heed. You need to watch it. So there's a Gezeres Shavah comparing watching to watching. Upesach Dairis Namiksiv. And the truth of the matter is, the Pesach of the generations also requires, in fact, examination of at least 4 days. You have to watch it for 4 days to make sure it doesn't get a blemish. Because what does it say in the pasuk by the Pesach? L'doiris, the Pesach for throughout the generations. V'avadita etzro avoda, double lashon. You shall perform the performance hazois, this one, the chodesh hazeh, in this month. Shiyu kol avodos chodesh zeh kezeh, teaching us that all of the Pesach avodos of the month of Nisan throughout history, that means starting with the Pesach Mitzrayim and moving into the Pesach L'Dairis, need to be the same as each other. Elohahu hazeh, but if that means Abadates Avodah Hazois would mean that everything is the same, then what's Chodesh Hazeh this month, which was only by, obviously was talking about the Egyptian Pesach, so Elahu Hazeh, this, Lemiyute Pesach, Sheni de Kabose, is to go ahead to exclude the second Pesach. Since the second Pesach was so similar to the Pesach Rishon, to the Pesach Mitzrayim, that it was also only 1 day, i.e. there isn't 7 days of the Yom Tov of Pesach, there's only 1 day, right? So there we're excluding the need over there for the Pesach Mitzrayim. The Pesach Sheni does not require 4 day examination before you bring the Pesach Sheni. Good. 96A3. Okay, says the Gemara, El Meyata Diksiv, V'Ochlu Sabosa Balayla Hazeh. Regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim, it says, you shall eat the flesh, you shall eat the meat, Balayla Hazeh, on this night. Hachanami Dezeh, this night, only in Egypt, the Necha Balayla. But from the Doris, from now on, you don't have to eat the Carbon Pesach, which is patently untrue. Obviously, every year there's a mitzvah to eat the Karban Pesach. So it says, Omicron, because it says, you shall perform the performance, which teaches us that it goes l'dayros, it goes throughout the generations. Right, the Gemara, Bazai, Ela Hazel Lamali. Then in that case, what did I need this for? Why did the pasuk come to this? If you're just trying to tell me that Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach l'dayros is exactly the same, that every time you need to eat it on the night of the 15th, what are you giving me the Hazeh, which is limiting? Which we're going to get to later, which is the great machlokes between Rabbi Elazar ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva, that they use the word Hazeh. Doesn't mean that you can only eat the Karban Pesach until Chatzos, until midnight, or like Rabbi Akiva, you can eat it all the way until the morning. And we're going to get to this on Daf Kuf Chav, literally the second to last Daf of the Masechta, which we're getting close to. We're getting close to the 10th parak, which for us is the most important parak because that's the parak of what we do today. Okay? It says regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim, the Egyptian Pesach, that no uncircumcised man shall eat of it. It says boy. Boy, it, which would seem to mean only in Egypt, the Pesach Mitzrayim, an uncircumcised person couldn't eat it. Mashma but an uncircumcised person, an oral, is allowed to eat the Pesach l'dayros, which is patently not true. On Makron, once again, we have Adita. What did I need this? It for. So it says, this you shall not eat, he shall not eat from the Pesach. What about the other mitzvahs of the night? But somebody who's uncircumcised most certainly is in the mitzvah of eating the matzah. Mara is a midrabanan, but it's just every time we say matzah, we say mara. But of course, he's in the mitzvah of the erev taichlu matzahs. In the evening, you shall eat matzahs. He absolutely does have the mitzvah of matzah. I might have thought that it's only that, just like he's not in the Karban Pesach, he's not in any of the mitzvahs of Pesach. Kamash v'lo, no, it's only exclusive to the Karban Pesach. Elameyata, but if that's the case, it says, no stranger should eat of it, okay? Which no stranger would mean he's strange to his Father in heaven, meaning he's an apostate, okay? He's an apostate. Hachanami the boy, right? And it seems to say that only in Mitzrayim, in the Pesach Mitzrayim, he was not allowed to eat. But it seems from here that he would be allowed to eat for prosperity in the Pesach for the generations, which again is patently untrue. Omakra, the same teretz. Whatever happened in Egypt happens all over. So what do I need the limitation of it for? Boy, hamarasas psula. It. The Karban Pesach, somebody who's an apostate, right, cannot eat from the Karban Pesach. But an apostate is allowed to eat truma if he's a kohen. If he's a kohen, by the heter to eat truma is simply this: are you from Shevet Levi? And within Shevet Levi, are you a kohen? We don't look any further. You're a kohen, you're allowed to eat. So now the Gemara says, oral, and the truth is the Torah needed to write this about an uncircumcised man, and needed to write the case of an apostate, regarding that they're not allowed to be involved in the Karban Pesach. Oral, if the Torah written just about an uncircumcised man, because it's repugnant. But a stranger is not physically repugnant. He's only intellectually repugnant, Maloi, I might think he's not disqualified from eating the Korban Pesach. Tzaricha, I needed to tell you that yes, an apostate is prohibited from eating the Korban Pesach. The Iyash Minamenecha, and if I just taught you about the apostate, Mishum de Ein Liboy L'Shemayim, I would have said he's disqualified because his heart is not towards heaven. But it's somebody who's uncircumcised, who in fact his heart is directed to the Eibishter. He wants to serve him with all his heart or all his soul and being. It's just as that he's uncircumcised. I would say that therefore he's not disqualified. He's allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. 96A4. Saricha. Therefore, the Torah had to go out of its way to tell us. Charlie, you're okay if we go to 9:15?
Absolutely.
9:15?
Yeah.
5 after that. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Elamayata. But from now, we'll look at something else is written regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim. Toisha v'sachir lo yochel bo. A sojourner and a hired laborer shall not eat from it. Okay? There are types of Jewish slaves. One is the one that is working for 6 years because he stole money and he needs to go ahead and pay it off. And one is one who after 6 years said, I don't want to leave. And so they took and they poked a hole in his ear, right? They poked a hole in the ear and he poked a hole in the ear. So he's got an earring, essentially, and he's thinking. So, and the reason for this, by the way, why they're Jewish, why shouldn't they eat? The answer is, what's the night of Pesach? The night of Cherus, of freedom. A person, a Jew, who does not appreciate freedom, who says, I'd rather be a slave and stay under my other's hand, and doesn't understand the sacrifices that one must take to be free, right? Then, of course, you're not in it. But that says it, boy, in it, which of course is the Pesach Mitzrayim. Hachanami the boy who ain't oichel, aval oichel will be Pesach Doiris, but it seems that they would be allowed to eat from the Pesach for the generations, and that's again patently not true. Now, the fact is, if you look at number 30, just look at number 30, the Gemara's question seems puzzling since, as we have explained, it actually is true that a Jewish slave must partake in the Pesach. So now the Gemara is going to answer. Amakro ba'avadita. Right, but it says avadita. Ela boy lamali. Boy hamores das pesulois. Ve'ein hamores das pesulois b'truma. Okay? This is very hard to understand. And if you look at number 31 in the article, they ask the question straight out. We already learned this halacha about hamoras das pisulos, that somebody who's an apostate doesn't eat from it, but is allowed to eat from the truma. So what does that answer us? Okay, and nor does it. What do you call it? So Rashi actually says this whole piece of Gemara should come out of the Gemara. Everything we just learned from Ela Meyata Tosha V'Sachel Lo Yochel Bo, in fact, should come right out of the Gemara. Because number one, we already learned this halacha of Maras Das Psulos before, right? Just before. Number two, in fact, the Jewish slave, of course, eats from the Korban Pesach. And what it really means is, he's eating the Korban Pesach not under his own auspices, he's eating it under the auspices of his owner. He's eating it on the auspices of his owner. But he does eat. So the truth is, this entire Gemara, in truth, in the Pashtus, simply needs to come out. We're learning it because it's there, but in truth, it seems to be an editing. In the words of the Art Scroll, Rashi suggests that this entire passage from Ela Meyata Tosha V'Sachel Lo Yochel Bo be stricken from the Gemara. Okay, it's not something that, of course, one can say on their own, but if Rashi says it, we certainly could think, and the questions are there. I mean, it's very hard to understand this Gemara, and this is one of those cases where the answer is, it so doesn't make sense. The Gemara already answered Haramas Das Psulos, and the actual halachas are not the case of what it says. So that's what it is. All right. Now, of course, this is a dangerous thing because once you get into the editing business, you can start editing, keep right on editing to make
How
everything
often do
fit
you see
your
this
point
in the
of view.
Gemara?
Very, very, very rare. Very rare. It happens a few places in Shas. It is very rare that Rashi comes along and will say, I think this was a complete error. Somebody wrote this up wrong and it has to come out. And you can understand why. This is an extraordinarily slippery slope. This is
Right.
biblical critique.
But it doesn't answer the question.
What? And that's the question.
That it's asking, so.
Right, exactly. It's not only not asking the question, it already answers
for another, right.
Right,
so
and the
right.
halachas themselves are not right. At a certain point, so in other words, you'll notice, we did not remove this from the Gemara. We don't remove the passage. We leave it in there because that's the Messiah, the tradition we have gotten, not from Rashi, but Rashi had for 800 years or 600 years. Remember, Rashi lived in the late 1000s and he is nifter in 1105. The Gemara was sealed in the year 400. So the Gemara was 600-700 years old, almost like our distance from the Shulchan Aruch to today. The Shulchan Aruch is about 600 years old, right? This was about the same to Rashi. Rashi did not take it out. Rashi merely pointed out the problem and says, listen, I don't know what to do with this, right? It really doesn't make sense here. So listen, I'm going to take the thing where I think he suggests we need to take this out. But we don't take it out. And that means you have the perfect right to try to figure out what the Gemara was really talking about and come up with a pilpul to try to work it out. And the reason for that is we do, and the reason is obviously because it's a slippery slope. Anyways, let's keep going. By the Pesach Mitzrayim it says, and you shall circumcise him and he shall eat it. Somebody who's not circumcised, circumcise him and he should eat it. Obviously, this is somebody that's capable of being circumcised, i.e. his two brothers didn't die from circumcision beforehand, or he's not too old where you're going to put his life in danger. From here again, it seems to say that he may not eat it without, in other words, he may not eat it without his sons and slaves being circumcised, but he may eat the Pesach, the Dairis, even if his sons and servants are not circumcised. That the milah, the circumcision of his sons and his slaves is required in order to take part in the Pesach. But the circumcision of his male children and his Eved Canaanim to be circumcised is not required for him to be able to eat truma. And again, if he's a kohen, that's the only thing that counts and nothing else. Elamayata says, a bone you shall not break of it. Hachanami, the boy and his shayber, abel shayber, the Pesach diaries, but you're allowed to break the bones for Pesach diaries, and we know that again, it's patently not true. Because it's to teach me that where is the Isser of breaking bones? Only on a valid Korban Pesach. A Korban Pesach that is valid, that can be eaten. In other words, a Korban that is not Tomei, but if you shechted the Korban Pesach and then it became Tomei, so you would not be able to eat it, but it still fulfills your commandment of shechting the Korban Pesach, because at the time of the Korban Pesach, it was good to go. It only became Tomei later. Nonetheless, if you then break one of its bones, you're not usher. In fact, the Gemara Elamayata Diksiv al Yochim Imenu No, if regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim, you shall not eat it raw or partially roasted. Mimenu iyata oichel. From over there in Egypt, you weren't allowed to eat it raw or partially roasted. Ela ata oichel no b'Pesach days, but you are allowed to eat the Pesach days raw or partially roasted, which is not true. Amakrova Vadata. Ela Mimenu Lamalit. And what did I need Mimenu? Okay, so we're on 96.85. Look at the Rava Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. For the Raven of Rava Rabbi Yitzchak, who, if you remember, way back in the day, uses the word Mimenu to create a Gezeir Shava between the Pesach and Ma'aseh Sheni, which is in order to say, just like the Pesach is not allowed to be eaten by an uncircumcised man, so too Ma'aseh Sheni is not allowed to be eaten by an oral and uncircumcised man. So the Mishnah goes a little further, but and you have to eat it quickly. Minolon, how did I know? The Oma Krokas, the Chaltamoisa B'chipazan. It said regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim, you shall eat it in haste. Only it is eaten in haste, and no other Pesach was required to be eaten quickly. Upesach doiris noye kol shiva, and the Pesach was eaten in haste during one night, but the Pesach doiris is eaten all 7 days. Frankly, Gemara, my coin, what are you talking about? Ilema Pesach. If you're talking about the actual Pesach offering, Pesach kol shiva mi'eka, is the Pesach, the common Pesach, eaten 7 days? What are you talking about? The Pesach is also, the Pesach is only eaten for one night, the night of the 15th month. Okay, so now we're on the Amid 6b1. We're getting to the Mishnah. 96b1. Ela Chametz. We're talking about the prohibition of eating Chametz. Michlal, are you coming to tell me that in Pesach Mitzrayim, Laila Echad Suloi, that with regarding Pesach Mitzrayim, the eating of eating Chametz was only at the first night, the night, but starting with the daytime of the 15th, allowed to eat Chametz. Is that true? I learned Rabbi Yisrael Galili says, Minai in the Pesach Mitzrayim, she'en chimutza noig el yom echad. How do I know that regarding the Pesach Mitzrayim that its Chametz prohibition, it was extended for 1 24-hour day, i.e. the night of the 15th and the day of the 15th, right? But Talmud Lai, because the pasuk says, "V'lo yochel chametz," and chametz shall not be eaten. The Sachlei in the next pasuk says, "Hayoim atem yotzim," because today you are leaving Mitzrayim, which tells therefore the juxtaposition that the prohibition of eating chametz in Mitzrayim was for a 24-hour period, not just the nighttime, not just the night of the 15th, but also the daytime of the 15th. Well, you're right. The Pesach Mitzrayim was eaten for one night, and so too is the Pesach of L'Doris for the generations. The Chimut side regarding the prohibition of eating chametz, Kol HaYom, in Mitzrayim, they had a 24-hour period that they were not allowed to eat chametz. Pesach doiris noig kol shiva, but the Pesach of the generations, it's noig for all 7 days, because the Yom Tov going forward will be 7-day Yom Tov. Very good. We are up to the Mishnah on Tzadik Vav Amud Beis.